Hello, health enthusiasts, and welcome to Rev Up Health, your go-to podcast for all things wellness. I'm Dr. Mark Hechler.
And I'm Tandi Hechler. Together, we're here to fuel your health journey with the best of functional medicine and holistic well-being.
Each episode will dive deep into topics that matter to your health, bringing you the latest insights, research, and inspiring stories.
So whether you're on a quest for vibrant health or just looking for daily health tips, we've got you covered.
So let's embark on this journey together and transform the way you live.
Hello, we are so excited to have a special guest on Rev Up Health podcast today. Her name is Jennifer Scheinman, and she is an accomplished registered dietitian nutritionist with over 2 decades of experience in nutrition and wellness. During her career, she has worked at some of the nation's leading health and wellness institutions, showcasing her depth of experience in the field. Jen's master's degree in integrative and functional nutrition, coupled with advanced training in bioenergetics and hormone health, provides her with a profound understanding of complex interplay between nutrition, cellular health, and longevity. This specialized education has equipped Jen with a unique skill set, enabling her to delve into the nuances of how dietary and lifestyle factors influence the body's energy production and biological processes of aging. Jen is currently the senior manager of Timeline Nutrition, where she plays a pivotal role in educating both healthcare professionals and consumers about the significance of cellular health and Urolithin A in the context of aging and longevity. Beyond her responsibilities at Timeline, she is a renowned speaker, writer, and media figure. Jennifer also continues to practice as a nutrition coach, dedicating herself to assisting clients in optimizing their nutrition for enhanced vitality and a longer health span. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome Jen. So we are so excited to have Jen here to talk with us today about Mitopure.
Yeah.
I guess we can get right into it.
So welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Joining us today. We appreciate your time, your effort.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I feel so blessed that I get to spend my days like introducing people to something they've probably never heard of before, but that can be so impactful in so many different aspects of their health.
Oh, yes. So, but yeah, our journey on Mitopure started back kind of the beginning of the year, I believe, right? So, it's certainly something that we gain a lot of interest in, and with our activity and our level of endurance, it's all about, life is about the mitochondria, and, what a person can do to improve mitochondrial function and health is just imperative to their everyday life as well as longevity. So we kind of want to get, your opinion about a lot of things today on that. It's just kind of how that touches base with folks in their own life and their daily habits. So, I guess we can kind of start off with that, with mitochondrial health. How's that related to longevity?
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. And I really personally think that, over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, mitochondrial health is going to be common everyday conversation, the way that gut health and the microbiome is. If we think about where the microbiome was 10 years ago, and at least mainstream public was just starting to think wow, we have these critters inside us and they're so important and they do things outside of just the gut, right? And the mitochondria is that same thing where just the research is exploding around the importance of mitochondrial health in so many different aspects of aging. And as that research really gets translated into mainstream media and functional practitioners, people are going to be talking about the mitochondria so much. So I really like to think of the mitochondria, I'm very visual. So I think of it as in an analogy of it's like a factory. If you can picture a factory inside your cells that takes raw materials, the food that you eat and the air that you breathe, and it goes through a very complex assembly line. And at the end, you get your cellular energy. It's called ATP. And, a lot of people have a little post-traumatic stress disorder of high school biology. So I won't scare anyone too much, but if you keep that visual of a factory in your mind, just like any other factory, it starts to wear down with overuse and as we age. And so there are things that we can do to help build new factories, to help make sure those factories are running efficiently and are protected. And then there's things that we can do when those factories break down. We can recycle them. We can kind of demolish them and rebuild newer ones. And so that's really the ultimate, sort of pathway of mitochondrial health, is kind of thinking about these three different areas: building new ones, keeping them functioning correctly, and then breaking them down, removing those broken mitochondria and making room to build new ones. And that's where Mitopure really comes in, the molecule Urolithin A, which is quite a mouthful. So I'll call it Mitopure. Yeah.
There's a lot of things that just really disrupt our mitochondrial function, from everything from what we eat, how we exercise, and our sleep, and all types of toxins and environmental exposures that we have. So, obviously anything we can do to help maximize its efficiency is just going to make everything a lot better for us in general.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about ways to optimize mitochondrial health?
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head, is like making sure that we're eating a healthy, well-balanced diet that's really rich in micronutrients, right? So let's start backwards, right? Like the raw materials, the food that we eat. So if you start with quality raw materials, that's obviously much better than starting with sort of crummy, low quality raw materials. And then they're called sort of like cofactors, all these things that help go into the energy metabolism process, right? Vitamins, minerals, all the things, again, that we get from a healthy, well-balanced diet can help optimize your mitochondrial function. And we can protect our mitochondria with, nutrient dense antioxidants. And then there's, sort of exercise that we can do, sleep, avoiding toxins, and then targeted nutrition therapy with, supplements that can help protect the mitochondria, make them function more efficiently, or help this process. It's called mitophagy, this recycling of, once those mitochondria get dysfunctional, you can break them down, get rid of them, and build newer, better functioning factories.
Excellent.
Right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Urolithin A that we get in Mitopure.
Yeah. So, I already touched a little bit on the gut, and that we're learning so much about what the gut microbiome does. And one of the things that the gut microbiome does is it creates what are called postbiotic nutrients. So I like to think of it as, we give these little bacteria and species in our gut, we basically give them room and board. They get to live inside our gut, and they get to eat the things we don't digest. So certain fibers we don't break down, certain polyphenols. These are compounds in a lot of plants and foods that we eat that we personally can't digest, but they can. And then they pay us back in these metabolites. So that's how they pay us. These metabolites that sort of travel throughout our body and do different things. So B vitamins and vitamin K, or some B vitamins and vitamin K, right? Those are examples of postbiotic nutrients. But Urolithin A happens to be one of those postbiotic nutrients. So we don't get it directly from food. We need a healthy gut microbiome to make it. And so we have these dietary precursors. I mentioned these polyphenols. And so they come from the foods, specifically in terms of Urolithin A, the precursors are really rich in foods like pomegranates, dark-skinned berries, and some nuts. So they're not in all the foods that we eat. So most of us aren't eating enough of those dietary precursors. And then most of us don't have the right gut microbiome to make it. And we've actually studied populations, and really only about 30 to 40% of the population. And that's worldwide. We tested it in different environments, different countries and different areas of the world. So most of us aren't making Urolithin A. And then what it does is it triggers that recycling process of the mitochondria that I've talked a little bit about, that mitophagy. So when those factories have gone through their wear and tear, when they've been damaged, we normally have this innate ability in our bodies to recycle them. And what Urolithin A does is it optimizes that process. It helps rejuvenate that recycling process, which also that recycling process declines as we get older as well too, of course. So you get more dysfunctional mitochondria, you have less ability to recycle them. And so that's really where Urolithin A can kind of step in.
For gut health, that is just so critical. And I don't think that people can appreciate what the quality of their gut health is so imperative, and just their function in their daily life, from everything from obviously Urolithin A production, but also just hormone regulation. So it's, a healthy gut is just imperative. And it's quite interesting to see that only 30 to 40% of the people have the appropriate bacteria, if you will, break down that. And those bacteria are the only ones that break it down. And if we don't have them, then you don't get the Urolithin A.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we don't know which specific strain of bacteria will make it. So I can't even say, go take this probiotic because that will give you the strain. We don't know. So we know that people who have healthier gut microbiomes and have richer sort of strains of bacteria in there will make it, but we haven't been able to pinpoint it. So that's really where, my background as a dietitian, I really do believe food first and supplements are meant to supplement where you can't get it from diet. And this is kind of that perfect case that most of us, we're just not going to get it from diet.
Yeah.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about what the research says about supplementing urolithin A.
Yeah. So here's where I find it so fascinating and where I think mitochondrial health is becoming so important. So other than our red blood cells, every cell in the body has mitochondria. And it has not just like one or two, right? There might be, depending on how energy dependent the tissue is. So like your brain and your muscles, like there might be thousands of mitochondria there. So when we start talking about the research, remember that it's due to the mitochondrial function. And so different tissues are going to have great responses. And that sometimes at first can be like, wow, this might be helpful for skin and it might be helpful for muscle. Yes, because it's happening on the mitochondrial level. So the research really started in the muscle space. And a couple of reasons why that's where it focused first is just because, the muscles are so important in terms of aging, right? Like we start to lose muscle mass. Muscle has so many, besides just mobility, right? It's basically like an endocrine organ. It can send out inflammatory markers. It's a glucose disposal system. There's so much importance there in terms of longevity. So that's where the research started. And it was really looked in like different age populations, middle-aged adults and older adults. There's 3 clinical trials. So the first one was really just proving that, in fact, when you take a supplement of urolithin A, you will see this induction in mitophagy. And we see that after about a month. We start to see that these old damaged mitochondria start to become dismantled, broken down, cleaned out, and we get newer mitochondria. And that was done with muscle biopsies. And then the question really becomes, well, so what, right? Like, how are people going to feel? What's really going to be the outcome there? And so 2 separate follow-up studies were done, one in middle-aged adults and one in older adults. And they looked at several different markers of muscle strength and performance. And in both of those, we saw improvements in muscle health. So in older adults, we started to see things like improvements in muscle strength. In middle-aged adults, we saw improvements in muscle endurance. And the thing that's really interesting to me is that those benefits happened even in the absence of changing diet or exercise. So and the one thing I should say is that it takes a little bit of time. So these aren't instantaneous. So those studies saw improvements at 2 months and at 4 months. So it's something that people do need to take for an extended period of time to really start seeing those benefits.
Right. Yeah. And I noticed that too. I mean, obviously I run marathons. And so my training level, I noticed when I kept a consistent training level, but when I began to take the urolithin A, I absolutely noticed a difference in my endurance. Straight for that. And it's actually sold me. I mean, there's no question. There's a lot of things you say, oh, you can read the studies, you can read the literature, but when you experience it, it just drives it home. And I noticed, you mentioned that some of the percentage of gain, anywhere from 12-17% in strength and endurance. But I literally noticed that's kind of where I felt in, is around 15% improvement. I really noticed a big difference, not only in strength, and ability to do workouts, but also in the endurance. When I'm out there running for several hours, then, I don't run out of steam. I'm able to continue without that fatigue. And I have not changed my training program. So it's certainly something that's noticeable.
Yeah. The other thing that we hear, so even though our research was done more in sort of sedentary adults, a lot of professional athletes are starting to, and recreational athletes as well, are starting to look at it in terms of how can it improve athletic performance as well. And as you've noticed, I noticed personally myself, and we hear this a lot, is recovery as well. I don't really get sore at the gym anymore. Even if I change up my workout and, or move up a weight set, I don't really get sore. And we did conduct a study. It's not published yet. We're still sort of analyzing the data, but that was actually done in Olympic trained endurance athletes. And the big story there really does seem to be that recovery. So that I'm hoping that study is going to be published real soon. But So what you're feeling, again, this like enhanced endurance and all that, we get that feedback quite a bit from people who are professional athletes or just really do a lot of, endurance type of training. So it's kind of exciting. And one of the things is that we do see in all of our studies, this robust improvement in inflammatory markers. So C-reactive protein, for example, that does come down in all of our studies. And so when you are doing these really hard bouts of training, there is a natural inflammation that happens as part of exercise. So the thought is that this is probably helping to quell some of that inflammation that's happening.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see what that does to those inflammatory markers.
Yeah.
IL-6 even also. So.
Yeah, and we actually just finished up a study that's also not published yet, but should be by the end of the year, looking at immune health. So, the immune system also is susceptible to mitochondrial decline and exhaustion. And so that's part of why as people get older, they are more susceptible to cancer and infections and, even things like vaccines don't work as well. So this was a study and it looked at, I believe it was about 50 healthy adults, and they were randomized to either placebo or 1,000 milligrams of Urolithin A. And after a month, we did this really intense immune phenotyping. And what we saw was like improvements again in sort of these markers of inflammation. And we saw that the immune cells had more mitochondria. They were more metabolically active. And so basically it kind of rewired this aging immune system. So it's, I think the inflammation piece is one to really keep a watch on and explore.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So one thing that we haven't gotten to experience too much is the topical application of Urolithin A. So I know you guys have a whole line of products that work with that too. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Urolithin A can be absorbed topically through the skin cells, and sort of it's a completely different mechanism of action. But people are very familiar with vitamin C. You need to eat that, but when you apply it topically as well, right, it has a much more localized, potent effect. And so that's what we've discovered with Urolithin A is when you apply it topically, those skin cells absorb it. It stays very localized. We see that same mitochondrial turnover. So the skin cells are basically acting in a more youthful way. And what we've seen in our clinical data, again, using skin biopsies and then using really, high tech sort of measurements of things like wrinkles. And we start to see that the genes that turn on collagen production and assembly and organization, those are all upregulated. So you're having more collagen production. The other thing that I think is super interesting is we also expose skin to UV light, which we know that UV damage is the number one cause of skin aging. And what we saw is that the skin cells are much more resilient to the damaging effects of UV light as compared to placebo. So that means a lot of that inflammation and redness that happens, erythema is what it's called sort of more clinically, that's reduced much more quickly. And so we have 3 different skin products which can be used alone, but for best results, you kind of get them in conjunction. So there's a serum, which you would use first, and then a day cream to use during the day and a night cream to use at night. And all 3 of them have 1% of Urolithin A in it, which is what was studied to be the best kind of most clinical dose. The products really are lovely. Like, there's no fragrance, there's no dyes, there are no colors. They're very gender neutral. So they don't feel like girly if people don't necessarily like have a big sort of elaborate skincare routine, but they're super effective, which is really, really nice. And I think people who are spending lots of time outdoors or even in front of computers where even the blue light is damaging our skin, it's just a really nice way to help kind of have that protective effect. And
so that also not only UV light resilience, but also collagen deposition. It changes the thickness level, would you say, for the collagen deposition?
We didn't really measure that yet. So it's, it's a rather newer product. It's been really on the market, I guess, maybe a little over a year and a half. But what we saw were the genes that turn on collagen production were upregulated. And then what we saw was that the visible signs of aging just after 2 weeks were reduced. And then when we took that out to 8 weeks, that was statistically significant when we used measurements, lab measurements of wrinkle depth and wrinkle volume. So so I'm not sure in terms of like collagen. Yeah, but there's still a lot to learn about the skin product. It's exciting. Yeah.
So people should plan to give it a good couple of months to notice some difference.
The interesting thing with the skin is that's a lot quicker. So that we saw in the skin biopsies, we saw some of that cellular turnover just happening in like 72 hours. And then, as I said, in 2 weeks, people are reporting that they see differences. And then it becomes sort of statistically significant at 8 weeks. So that's a lot more of an immediate result, which is really nice. Especially, people want immediate results in everything. So the dietary supplement is going to take more time. That's, I would say giving it 8 weeks is, even up to 4 months is probably a good idea. Although our customers say they feel things sooner. People notice an improvement in energy, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, but based on our clinical data, I kind of like to give people that expectation. It could take longer.
It's a good motivator for people too. Motivation is what drives everybody to be consistent in their activities and their exercise. So, if you start feeling better, you're gonna actually perform better and probably stick with your program and change it up even. So
absolutely, awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good tool.
Yeah.
So one other thing that just kind of came to mind is, so we're talking about Urolithin A, which is the active ingredient, and what makes Mitopure better than just another Urolithin A supplement that you could get?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. So most of the research that's done out there is actually done with Mitopure. So we have really an extensive R&D team that publishes these really top high quality, scientific research papers in top quality medical journals, right? So this isn't just sort of like some company doing something in like a basement lab and just making false claims. We really take this very seriously. So my background as a dietitian, I've worked in the field for, over like 25 years. And I've never seen a supplement company do the type of work that Timeline is the parent company of Mitopure that they're doing. And that was kind of why I joined the team, because this is really raising the bar on the way dietary supplements are done. And then of course we have third-party certifications to make sure that what we have is a quality, clean ingredient. So we're NSF for sport, clean label certified. So that way, these third parties are basically saying, yeah, there's no additives or contaminants to here, and truth in labeling. There is 500 milligrams of pure Urolithin A that's in here. So most of the research really came from our company. That's really like who put Urolithin A on the map. And so you can kind of trust that it's a clean, quality, and pure supplement.
It's a once a day dosing for the folks that don't know about it. It's a once a day dosing.
Yep. You can go up to 1,000 milligrams. So there does seem to be, especially like I mentioned that immune data that was with 1,000 milligrams. I believe the endurance study that I talked about, I believe that was 1,000 milligrams as well. So you can go up. The benefits plateau at past 1,000. So even though there's not really like an upper safety level or toxicity that can happen, there's just no reason to go higher than 1,000 milligrams. So.
And side effect profile is really good.
Super. Yeah. I mean, everything was in our clinicals was, compared to placebo, it was the same. We really get very few negative feedbacks. I think the biggest thing is people really expect to feel something, and not everybody will feel something, right? Like most of our customers do say they feel great results, like you're saying. But I think that it's important to recognize that even if you're not feeling anything, that doesn't mean that under the hood it's not happening, right? Like I don't feel my vitamin D doing anything, but I know that I need to take it, right? There are certain supplements you'll definitely feel. So I think that's just an important thing for people to understand as well, is to really just kind of understand the science of what's happening, and that mitochondrial decline is one of these key hallmarks of aging, everything from our brain to our skin, to our muscles, even reproductive aging is all tied to mitochondrial health. And so I really believe this is kind of like a foundational, like with vitamin D and with omegas, this is kind of a foundational piece of your sort of longevity plan.
Yeah, that's a great analogy with cars. So, everybody, that car's going to run, but, you gotta change the oil, you gotta take care of the tires, and you gotta and fix the belts and all that. So it's maintenance.
Yep.
Keeps it running. Keeps it longer.
And one thing to mention too, I think, is just how to take it. As you mentioned, you can take it really at any time of the day, even though it's energizing, it's not stimulating. So it's not going to keep you up at night. And as I mentioned, it's going to take you 4 to 6 weeks to start feeling it. And there's 2 different ways to take the supplement. We have soft gels, which are I take those usually because I travel a lot, but we have a really nice powder, which you can mix into like a smoothie. It's very flavored. There's no fake sugars or added sugars. It's just kind of like very flavored. And it's, like I said, it's great into a smoothie. It's great in yogurt. And so that's a way for people who are either not interested in taking pills or already taking so many pills, they don't want to add another one to their regimen. So
I think we find that a lot, actually. So it's so nice that there is an option, especially when people start this kind of longevity journey. there are a lot of things, and it's nice to have a powder that you can just add with all the other powders.
Yeah, you just make a super complex smoothie, or, I think it's great. Like yogurt is like, I mix mine with Greek yogurt, and it's a great, like, you get that protein from the yogurt, and then you get the probiotics, and then you get the Urolithin A. So it's just a really nice kind of like food-based approach to getting the Urolithin A that kind of covers all these bases. So,
yeah. So one of the things that we talked about with the gut health in relation to Urolithin A, have any of your studies looked at, does it have the same effect if someone doesn't have great gut health?
Yeah. So the beauty of taking Urolithin A is that you're bypassing the need to have good gut health. So our gut is primed and ready to absorb it. You don't have to rely on having a gut, the right gut microbiome to make it for you. So we have seen, really nice concentrations of Urolithin A showing up in the bloodstream, regardless of whether you have healthy gut microbiome or, just a healthy gut or not. So, yeah. So
I saw, I think it was 6 times the blood level, versus just pomegranate juice.
Exactly. So even that study goes back to the one I was mentioning is, even if you have the right gut microbiome to make it, in order to get the same sort of blood level, the same sort of therapeutic dose, you'd have to drink 6 cups of pomegranate juice, which I love pomegranates. I think they're a great food. I would never tell someone to drink 6 cups of pomegranate juice a day. Probably the sugar alone that you're getting from that is like counterbalancing any benefit you would get from the Urolithin A. So do not advise 6 cups of pomegranate juice a day.
Right.
But so.
Awesome.
Well, this is so great. We really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us about this. And we're really excited that we can offer a 5% discount to our listeners with the code Revelation Health and Wellbeing, all one word. So that's super exciting.
Awesome. But
Well,
we really appreciate you taking time to explain things and kind of, shed a little light on something new. And, I'm sure that, like you said, and coming up, I think mitochondrial health is and it's already exploding. So it's just the details from it we're just scratching the surface. So, and I think there's going to be a lot of benefits to knowing and improving our mitochondrial health.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to see what it all says. So thank you guys so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah. We enjoyed it. So hopefully everybody will have a good day today, but we appreciate everybody watching in.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rev Up Health. We hope you're leaving with some valuable insights to supercharge your health journey.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe to Rev Up Health wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review.
Have a topic you want us to explore? Reach out to us on social media channels. We love hearing from our wellness community.
Until next time, keep thriving, and remember, your journey to health is a journey to a better you.
Stay well, and we'll connect with you again soon. This is Tandi.
And this is Dr. Mark, signing off from Rev Up Health. Take care.
The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. The content is designed to support, not replace, the relationship that exists between a patient and their healthcare provider. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your healthcare regimen, including diet, exercise, or treatment plans. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Revelation Health and Wellbeing.